Kim Jong Un just turned Iran's war a global crisis. 24 hours warning. For weeks, the world believed the war in the Middle East was contained. Missiles were flying, drones were crossing the sky, oil markets were shaking, yet the conflict still looked like a regional struggle. Then something changed. Not a missile strike, not a massive battle, just a short message, quietly delivered from Pyongyang. 12 words. A warning that most people barely noticed, but intelligence agencies immediately understood. If even one North Korean citizen inside Iran is harmed, North Korea will enter the war. Suddenly, the calculations changed, because hidden inside Iran's military infrastructure, there may already be North Korean engineers, technicians, and weapons advisors, which means a single strike. One accident, one name appearing on a casualty report, could pull another nuclear state directly into the conflict. Markets are beginning to notice, military planners are recalculating, and behind closed doors, governments are asking a question that nobody wants to say publicly. Did the Iran war just become a global crisis? Because if that warning was real, then the next 24 hours may matter more than anyone realizes. Welcome to Warfront Global. Before we go further, if you are someone who likes to understand the world clearly, the way experienced people read the morning paper with calm attention, consider subscribing to this channel. Think of it like putting on your reading glasses before the headlines arrive. And if you don't mind, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from tonight? Because the story unfolding right now is not only about governments or armies, it concerns everyone. The morning had started like many others during periods of geopolitical tension. News organizations reported missile exchanges and military activity across the Middle East. Governments monitored the situation carefully, while financial markets reacted with cautious uncertainty. At first glance, the conflict appeared familiar. Regional rivals confronting each other through controlled escalation, limited strikes designed to weaken infrastructure without triggering a wider war. But experienced analysts were watching something deeper. They were watching signals. In international politics, conflicts rarely expand without warning. Before escalation happens, leaders often send messages designed for other governments rather than the public. Kim Jong Un's statement was one of those signals. The North Korean leader rarely comments publicly on Middle Eastern conflicts. His government normally focuses on the Korean peninsula, its tensions with the United States and its regional allies. This time was different. The statement referred specifically to North Korean citizens currently inside Iran. Kim Jong Un declared that their safe return was non-negotiable. He added that if even one of them were harmed during the conflict, North Korea would enter the war. For casual observers, the statement might have sounded dramatic but distant. For intelligence professionals, it meant something very specific. It meant a tripwire had been placed inside the conflict. A tripwire is a strategic mechanism designed to guarantee escalation if a certain threshold is crossed. During the Cold War, superpowers often placed troops in vulnerable locations to ensure that any attack would automatically involve their country. By publicly linking North Korean citizens to the conflict in Iran, Kim Jong Un created exactly that kind of mechanism. Now every military strike inside Iran carries a new question. Could a North Korean advisor be inside the facility being targeted? Could a technician be working there when a missile lands? Could one name on a casualty report suddenly change the entire direction of the war? Because if that happens, the Iran conflict would no longer remain regional. It would become something far larger, and the world is now beginning to realize how close that possibility may be. The question that began circulating quietly among intelligence analysts was no longer about the statement itself. The question was far more important. Why were North Korean citizens inside Iran during an active military conflict? To understand the significance of this situation, analysts began revisiting a relationship that had been developing quietly for decades. The cooperation between Iran and North Korea did not begin recently. Its foundations were laid during the late years of the Cold War when both nations faced increasing isolation from Western financial and military systems. Iran needed advanced military technology. North Korea needed resources and economic partners willing to operate outside Western sanctions. Their interests aligned. Over time, this alignment evolved into a practical partnership built around military engineering and weapons development. Intelligence reports over the years had repeatedly suggested that North Korean missile technology influenced several generations of Iranian ballistic missile systems. The relationship was rarely acknowledged publicly. Most of the cooperation occurred quietly through technical exchanges, engineering support, and defense research programs. For many years, this partnership remained in the background of global politics. Analysts knew it existed, but it rarely dominated strategic discussions. Kim Jong Un's statement changed that. By openly referring to North Korean citizens inside Iran, the North Korean leadership effectively confirmed something that had long been suspected but rarely discussed publicly. Those citizens were not diplomats or business representatives. They were technical personnel, weapons engineers, military advisors, specialized technicians. Their role was not symbolic. Their presence suggested active cooperation within sensitive areas of Iran's defense infrastructure. For strategic planners, this detail introduced a new level of complexity. Military operations targeting infrastructure typically rely on intelligence about facilities, equipment, and personnel. Planners evaluate the risk of civilian casualties, diplomatic consequences, and escalation scenarios. Now an additional question had entered the calculation. Could North Korean personnel be present inside the target area? The possibility immediately increases the strategic risk of every operation. Even a carefully planned strike designed to degrade military capabilities could accidentally trigger a much larger geopolitical response. This is the nature of a tripwire system. It transforms uncertainty into automatic escalation. For the United States and its allies, this creates a strategic dilemma. Avoiding escalation requires precise intelligence about who is present inside each facility. But intelligence during wartime is rarely perfect. Facilities move, personnel relocate, engineers travel between sites, military infrastructure evolves rapidly during conflict. One mistake becomes enough. At the same time, North Korea benefits from the ambiguity created by this situation. The mere possibility that its citizens could be present forces adversaries to reconsider every action. In strategic terms, uncertainty itself becomes a defensive tool. Iran also benefits from this arrangement. The presence of North Korean advisors potentially strengthens its military programs while simultaneously creating an additional layer of deterrence. A strike against Iranian infrastructure might now carry unpredictable geopolitical consequences. This relationship also reflects a broader trend shaping global politics. Countries facing economic sanctions increasingly cooperate with one another to bypass restrictions imposed by Western financial systems. Iran and North Korea have both operated under extensive sanctions for decades. Their ability to maintain military cooperation despite these pressures demonstrates how parallel networks outside traditional financial systems can continue functioning even under heavy international scrutiny. For entrepreneurs and business leaders observing global events, this pattern carries an important lesson. Economic systems and geopolitical alliances are evolving simultaneously. Sanctions, trade restrictions, and financial pressure do not always isolate states completely. Instead, they sometimes encourage the creation of alternative partnerships operating outside traditional structures. The Iran-North Korea relationship illustrates this reality clearly. Two heavily sanctioned countries found strategic value in cooperation, and over time, their partnership matured into something far more significant than most observers initially recognized. Kim Jong Un's warning did not create this partnership. It revealed it. And once revealed, the consequences extend far beyond the battlefield. Because military alliances rarely remain confined to weapons alone. They influence energy markets, trade routes, financial stability, and international investment decisions. Which leads analysts to the next question now emerging inside policy circles. If North Korea has publicly tied its security to Iran's conflict, who else might quietly be connected to the same strategic network? As analysts examined the implications of North Korea's warning, attention began shifting toward a larger strategic pattern that had been forming quietly for years. The relationship between Iran and North Korea was only one piece of a much broader geopolitical structure. Increasingly, intelligence agencies and policy experts were discussing the possibility of an emerging alignment involving four states that share a common strategic pressure: Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. Each of these countries operates under some form of Western economic or military pressure. Sanctions, trade restrictions, and security rivalries have gradually pushed them toward deeper cooperation in areas where their interests overlap. What makes this alignment significant is not ideology, it is practicality. Each country contributes something different to the network. Russia provides military doctrine, battlefield experience, and political influence across Eurasia. Its defense industry remains one of the largest in the world, and its strategic relationship with several regional powers allows it to shape conflicts far beyond its borders. China provides economic weight. Its manufacturing capacity, financial institutions, and global trade networks create an economic buffer that allows partner states to withstand sanctions that might otherwise cripple their economies. Iran contributes geography. Positioned at the crossroads of the Middle East, it sits beside one of the most critical energy corridors in the global economy, the Strait of Hormuz. A large percentage of the world's oil supply moves through this narrow passage each day. North Korea contributes something different altogether. It provides weapons production at scale. Its missile development programs and military manufacturing facilities have operated under sanctions for decades, forcing the country to build systems designed to function outside conventional global supply chains. When these capabilities are viewed together, analysts begin to see a network rather than isolated partnerships. Russia brings military knowledge. China brings economic resilience. Iran brings strategic geography. North Korea brings weapons manufacturing. The result is a structure capable of resisting pressure from traditional Western power centers. Kim Jong Un's statement about North Korean citizens inside Iran becomes far more significant when viewed within this broader framework. It signals that cooperation between these states may extend beyond quiet diplomatic support and into direct strategic coordination. For military planners in Western capitals, this introduces a new level of uncertainty. If escalation in Iran triggers involvement from North Korea, the situation could quickly evolve into a confrontation involving multiple global powers with overlapping interests. Even if these states do not formally enter the conflict together, their indirect support could reshape the balance of power in ways that make containment extremely difficult. Economic strategists are watching these developments closely as well. The global economy functions through interconnected systems of energy supply, trade routes, and financial flows. Disruptions within one region can ripple outward rapidly. And when several major geopolitical actors begin aligning their interests during a conflict, the potential for wider economic consequences increases dramatically. The Iran conflict was once viewed as a regional problem with limited global impact. Now, analysts are beginning to reconsider that assumption. Because if the emerging alignment between these states becomes more visible, the next phase of the crisis may not be defined only by missiles or military strikes. It may be defined by how global economic systems respond to the pressure of a widening geopolitical divide. By the time policymakers began to fully understand the implications of Kim Jong Un's warning, attention had already shifted to a deeper concern. The real danger of escalation was not only military, it was economic. Modern conflicts rarely remain confined to battlefields. They spread through systems that keep the global economy functioning: energy supply chains, shipping routes, financial markets, and international investment networks. The Iran conflict sits directly beside one of the most sensitive economic pressure points in the world, the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway connects the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. Every day, a significant share of the world's oil exports passes through this channel. Energy shipments moving from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, and Iran must all travel through this corridor to reach global markets. Because of this geography, even the perception of instability around the Strait of Hormuz can send immediate signals through global markets. Energy traders begin adjusting expectations. Shipping companies reassess risk exposure. Insurance firms reevaluate coverage for vessels operating in the region. The result is often the same: prices move quickly. Oil markets are particularly sensitive to geopolitical shocks. Even minor disruptions can cause sudden spikes in prices because global energy demand remains tightly connected to industrial production, transportation, and electricity generation. For businesses across the world, this creates immediate consequences. Higher energy costs ripple through supply chains, increasing transportation expenses, manufacturing costs, and consumer prices. What begins as a regional conflict can rapidly translate into global inflationary pressure. Shipping is another vulnerable system. If the security environment around the Strait of Hormuz deteriorates, commercial vessels may begin rerouting or delaying shipments. Maritime insurers often respond quickly to military escalation by increasing premiums for ships operating in high-risk waters. Higher insurance costs mean higher shipping costs, and those costs eventually reach consumers through higher prices on goods moving through global trade networks. Financial markets react as well. Investors typically respond to geopolitical uncertainty by shifting capital toward assets considered safer during periods of instability. Volatility increases. Commodity prices fluctuate. Currency markets adjust rapidly as governments evaluate the potential economic consequences of prolonged conflict. For entrepreneurs, business leaders, and investors observing these developments, the lesson is clear. Geopolitical risk is not separate from economic strategy. It is part of it. Decisions made in distant political capitals can influence supply chains, energy prices, and investment conditions thousands of miles away. Kim Jong Un's statement illustrates how quickly the strategic landscape can change. A single geopolitical signal transformed a regional war into a scenario with global implications, not because missiles were launched, but because the possibility of escalation suddenly expanded. And in the modern world, perception often moves markets before events themselves occur. The most important question facing governments and businesses now is not simply whether the conflict will expand. It is whether global economic systems are prepared for the pressure that expansion could create. Because history repeatedly shows that wars in strategic locations rarely stay limited for long. They spread outward, through energy markets, through trade routes, through financial systems, and sometimes through the decisions of leaders who understand that global stability can be influenced by just a few carefully chosen words. The statement from Pyongyang may have been brief, but its implications are still unfolding, and the world is now watching closely to see whether that warning was only a signal or the first step toward something far larger.